Imagine living in a world where freedom seemed to be disappearing map by map. Cities were falling, countries were surrendering, and millions believed that history had already chosen its winner. In 1941, Germany appeared unstoppable. But there was something the world had not yet seen, something that did not appear on maps or in propaganda speeches. Today, you will understand why, when America entered World War II, it was not just another country joining the conflict. It was the moment when the fate of the war, and of the entire century, began to change. Stay until the end, because the most powerful part of this story is not found in the battles. It is found in what happened behind them. The illusion of power that dominated Europe. At the beginning of the 1940s, Germany had crushed France, dominated much of Europe, and spread the belief that resistance was futile. Military parades, flags flying over conquered capitals, and fiery speeches created a narrative of absolute superiority. For many, the question was no longer who would win the war, but how long it would take before the entire world bowed. But wars are not won by armies on the battlefield alone. They are won with production, logistics, supplies, fuel, food, ships, aircraft, and above all, with the ability to sustain a long fight. And silently, as Germany advanced, the conflict was beginning to transform into something the Axis was not prepared to face. The mistake that opened the wound, the Eastern Front. When Hitler decided to invade the Soviet Union, he bet everything on a quick victory. The plan was simple: defeat the enemy within months and secure vital resources. But reality was brutal. The distances were enormous, the climate unforgiving, and the Soviet people fought with a level of resistance Germany had never encountered before. Winter froze machines, men, and supplies. Supply lines stretched to their breaking point. With every kilometer advanced, the human and material cost multiplied. Stalingrad was not just a military defeat, it was the moment Germany lost control of the war's narrative. For the first time, the world saw that the Reich was not invincible. The war ceased to be a parade of victories and became a war of attrition, exactly the kind of conflict that demands more than strategy. It demands nearly limitless resources. The real war was not only at the front, but in the factories. While soldiers fought in the trenches, another war was being waged far from the battlefield, the war of production. Tanks, planes, ships, ammunition, trucks, fuel. Germany had technology, discipline, and efficiency, but it did not have scale. Every lost tank was difficult to replace. Every downed aircraft was a painful blow. The German economy lacked sufficient oil, had limited access to global raw materials, and could not produce at the pace required to sustain a prolonged world war. The conflict was becoming a contest of industrial endurance, and in that contest, Germany was racing against the clock. Britain stood firm. The world still had a foundation of hope. Even under relentless bombing, even when it seemed alone, Britain did not fall. By controlling the seas, it kept supply routes open, receiving food, equipment, and resources from across the world. German submarines inflicted heavy damage, but they could not break the system. The United Kingdom became a floating fortress, a bridge between continents, proving that the war was not yet lost. The flame of resistance remained alive. The world only needed something more, a force capable of transforming that hope into real power. When America awoke, not just soldiers, but an entire nation in motion. Then came December 1941. Pearl Harbor. In a matter of hours, the United States ceased to be a distant observer. But what America brought to the war was not merely more armed men. It was something no other nation could offer at that scale, a total mobilization of society. Factories became military production lines. Entire cities worked for the war effort. Women filled industrial positions. Shipyards produced vessels in days instead of months. Planes, tanks, and trucks rolled out in numbers the world had never witnessed. It was not just an army going to war. It was an entire nation placing its economy, creativity, and determination in the service of freedom. The invisible turning point. The power of American production. While Germany struggled to replace what it lost, the United States produced more than what it needed, not only for itself, but for its allies. Ships crossed the oceans carrying supplies to Britain, to the Soviet Union, to forces on every continent. Every American factory became a weapon. Every worker became part of the front line. The battlefield now included Detroit, Pittsburgh, New York, California. The war was no longer only a military struggle. It became a demonstration of industrial and organizational power. From that moment on, the balance of history began to shift irreversibly. Pride. Why America's entry changed everything. The United States did not enter the war merely to win a conflict. It entered to prove that a free society, when united, can overcome any machine of oppression. In just a few years, America helped liberate Western Europe, defeat the Nazi regime, and rebuild a devastated continent. It was not only military strength. It was logistics. It was sacrifice. It was innovation. It was leadership. It was the demonstration that democracy and industry, when working together, can defeat even the most feared empires. Victory did not belong to a single nation, but no one can deny it. Without America's entry, the world would have been darker, longer in suffering, and infinitely more violent. The historical truth, and the moral impact. Yes, Germany was already facing serious problems before the United States entered the war. Yes, the Soviet Union was resisting with tremendous force. Yes, Britain never fell. But it was America that transformed resistance into superiority, hope into certainty, survival into victory. The war ceased to be a desperate struggle and became an inevitable march toward the liberation of Europe. The entry of the United States did not merely accelerate the end of the conflict, it redefined what it meant to fight for a free world. Conclusion. The moment history changed direction. When the United States entered World War II, the world did not see just another army. It saw an idea in motion, that freedom was worth defending with everything a nation could offer. From that moment on, the fate of the Third Reich became only a matter of time. Not because America sought conquest, but because it chose to fight so that the world would not be ruled by fear. That was the moment the 20th century changed course. That was the moment history decided that tyranny would not have the final word. If you've made it this far, now tell me, do you believe the war could have ended the same way without the entry of the United States? Or do you think it was American power that transformed a struggle for survival into a victory for freedom? Leave your comment. Because understanding the past is not only about remembering battles. It is about recognizing the value of those who chose to fight when the world needed them most.